This week's podcast episode. I'm really excited about today's guest, Dr. Kevin Gazzara, and he's the CEO of Magna Leadership Solutions, and he's got a lot of experience as an entrepreneur, coach in industry. We're going to talk about making a break from corporate America, positive intelligence, how to develop it, personal brand, and I'm happy to welcome Kevin to the show. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks a lot, Chris. I'm looking forward to hopefully giving the listeners useful information that they can use both in business and their personal lives.
Yeah, I love that. And kind of set the stage, your story, your background, and we'll dive right into the conversation.
Sure. I was born and raised in Philadelphia area. Did all my undergraduate work in engineering and business. Spent 30 years in corporate world. Went back and did my MBA and then ultimately my doctorate in organizational leadership, which is my passion. And the last 18 years before I retired, and I had a personal goal. I wanted to retire at 50 and then go give back and do my own thing. And fortunately, had a great financial advisor and a great mentor, and I was able to do that. I spent 18 years at Intel, and lots of different jobs. Came in as a marketing engineer, as a product manager, as an ops manager. I was a general manager for a small division. But the last 10 years I had spent at Intel, I initially managed Intel's leadership development programs. Actually, I managed Intel University for a couple of years for the US, and then I managed their development programs. And I did that for about my last 6 years. And Intel is a fantastic place to learn and grow. Great technology company, great people, great leaders. I tell people I had 10 managers when I was managing there. I had 8 managers who were incredible leaders, and then I had 2 other ones that I just learned so much from of what not to do. But the last several years I managed Intel's what they called residential programs for first and midline management. And we used to do 2,500 managers and leaders in 10 different countries every year. When I retired from Intel in June of 2007 to start up my firm with 2 of my colleagues from Intel, we had just finished training our 40,000th manager. So I got pretty good. It was, week-long programs. We did them all over the world. Fantastic learning, great opportunity for me to develop some amazing material, get feedback from the managers and senior managers, and then take those kind of concepts into the world I'm living in now with my business partners, giving it to companies, giving them this incredible level of leadership development in our Leading Forward Academy. For organizations, small to medium-sized organizations that don't have $10 million to spend.
Yeah. You have quite a fascinating story, and, we'll kind of dive right into it. And I love how you describe your path to retirement is like you had good mentors, and, a lot of people don't have financial advisors because of, but that's a different story. But one thing that we love is this idea of how to make the break from corporate America. A lot of people are disillusioned with just the whole job security paradigm, and they want to become self-employed. They want to be business owners, entrepreneurs. Kind of talk about this, make the break from corporate America.
Yeah, well, I had a 10-year plan. So, most of the people I end up either coaching or consulting with don't have a plan. They get downsized, or they finally get one of those managers like I had, where they just can't tolerate just kind of dealing with the micromanagement anymore. And then they make the break, but they really haven't set them up for success. And, one of the things that I think was so important for me is I had a great mentor at Intel, Cecilia. She was my mentor for 4 or 5 years. And we put a 10-year plan together. And like I said, working between her and some coaches, as well as a great financial planner, we stayed on track, and my goal was when I hit 50, I'd be able to check out. I actually checked out at 51. My financial advisor called me on my birthday at 50 and said, hey, if you ever want to kind of check out, you can go do whatever you want. We've followed the plan for the last 10 years. And if you don't make any more money, you don't make any money, you're going to be fine anyway, which is a nice place to be. But it took that 10 years to get to that point with doing things very systematically. And what I would tell people listening is, if you don't have a plan, get a plan. If you don't have a mentor or a coach, get a coach. And if you don't have a financial planner, get a financial planner. And between those, three individuals, you will be set for life.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Basically a plan, and you execute the plan. And some people think it's overnight, but you clearly elucidated it takes time. It takes habits. All these things, you don't retire early for, just out of the blue. You have to, it takes some strategy and skills. So next question is talking about how to develop your positive intelligence. A lot of people, I'm just curious, what is positive intelligence, and kind of expand on that.
Sure. Well, when I did most of my doctoral work, 20 years ago, I was looking at how people are motivated and engaged. So I did a lot of work around the concept of flow, emotional intelligence. And I think most people are familiar with emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence was developed by a guy by the name of Dr. Daniel Goleman back in Rutgers back in the 90s. And it's really, it's about, how we kind of understand ourselves, how we handle what we know about ourselves, and how we interact and react with others. And that's all kind of creates the type of motivation that you have. So Goleman did fantastic work, great research on that. And I've always been a fan of the emotional intelligence work. And the previous work prior to Goleman was a guy by the name of Howard Gardner, who came up with different types of intelligences. But the thing that Goleman always challenged me was that his material, although incredibly well researched, gave you more descriptive elements rather than prescriptive elements. So now that I know all of this, and I know my EQ score is 74 out of 100 or whatever, what do I do with it? And it was always a little bit descriptive as opposed to a prescription. And several years ago, a gentleman by the name of Shirzad Chamine out of Stanford wrote this book called Positive Intelligence. And basically what Shirzad had done, first of all, it's a fantastic book. I highly recommend it to anyone. Easy read, makes a lot of sense, well researched, really easy to put into practice. And he really took that work that Goleman had done, along with many other researchers like Richard David Rock, with regard to positive psychology, some work from Martin Seligman. So he's taken all these different experts and he's created this operating system. And what it is it's taking the concept of mindfulness and understanding kind of your saboteurs and your sage brain. He says there's really two parts of your brain. One half is your saboteurs, and we'll talk a little bit about those, the 10 saboteurs we all have, and the sage brain and how you approach problems. And the key is if you can build these new neural pathways, kind of using neuroscience through this continued, very small time practice, it's the repetition that builds the neural pathways, that you can really kind of shift your brain from kind of a fixed mindset to a growth mindset.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, I love that. Actually, I just saw it on Audible. So check that out. It sounds quite interesting. And I love this idea of this neuroplasticity that you're talking about, where you're just kind of like small daily habits, and then kind of you build those neural pathways. Kids, they pick things up really easily because they're so pliable, and we as adults have to kind of be more intentional. So that's quite interesting. So kind of talk about, developing positive intelligence, and then you're creating your own personal brand, and you're transitioning from manager to a leader. I'm really intrigued by this.
Sure. So first, let's talk a little bit for the listeners or the viewers, is to figure out, first of all, you need to understand what your who your saboteurs are. And if you go to www.pqtrainingandcoaching.com, that'll take you to my website. And on the website, there'll be a small form to fill in, and you'll get this jumpstart document that'll allow you to kind of get it in there. And also, it'll take you to Shirzad's site so that you can take the assessment. The assessment only takes about 10 minutes to take. It's free. And what you'll do is it'll give you kind of the strength of your saboteurs. That's the first assessment in the quick start document. And then the second assessment that's in there is going to tell you your overall strength of your positive intelligence. The maximum I think is 99, 0 to 99, and and it's basically evaluating your sage brain, that brain that looks for opportunity. It really looks at everything as an opportunity rather than as a threat. And the higher your score, the better. And what Shirzad has found is that you really need to get to a score of about 75, a 3-to-1. And what it says is, if I have 75 sage brain looking, for a variable kind of non-fixed mindset, that looks for opportunities, versus the 25, which is the sage brain or the saboteur brain. If you can get it to that point, basically that's where things drastically change for you. So take the assessment. I would say, because we do the 6-week programs on how to do this. You don't have to take one of our 6-week programs. I will say one of our programs is amazing. But if you want to just go read the book and take the assessment, it'll give you a really good idea of kind of what we're talking about. And it talks about the 10 saboteurs that we have. We have the overarching saboteur, which is the judge, which takes all the other voices in our head, and it puts it all together, and it creates that judgment of whether I'm good enough and smart enough and so forth. But the other 9 saboteurs are, he has named them as kind of the controller, right? The hyperachiever, where nothing is good enough and you have to keep doing more. There's the restless person, where you're constantly thinking about what's next and what should be next. There's a stickler that pays attention to the really small details and quite often gets stuck in there. There's the pleaser saboteur, which is always trying to do things for others, making, not creating any kind of conflict, even if it's your own expense. There's the hypervigilant, and the hypervigilant is really paying attention to, very similar to the stickler, but it's always thinking about there's more to come, and how do I pay attention, and what should I have done, and so forth. So that's the hypervigilant. And then there's the avoider saboteur, where you basically just kind of stick your head in the ground and just hope things go away, and hope is not a strategy. And then there's the victim, where everything is poor me. And then the last one is what's, one of my saboteurs, which is the hyper-rational, where the hyper-rational saboteur says that everything can be kind of turned into a number, and you can deal with everything rationally. And one of the things I learned from not only getting certified to teach this a couple of years ago, but also from teaching it, is that, the engineer brain, us scientist type of people, what we really want to do is we really want to go after the facts first, and start arguing or debating or, creating a position for us. And what you really have to realize is that, we are emotional creatures. And until you can get through that emotional wall to get to the rational brain, it's really just an uphill battle. And that's what the positive intelligence program teaches you, is how to do that. And as you mentioned before, it's these small micro habits that you create through 2 to 5 minute mindfulness activities that actually show up on an app on your phone. I get a little ding that just says, "Hey, it's time to take a 2-minute break. Here's some things to do." And by doing that over and over and over again, it builds these new neural pathways, like you would build when you were a kid.
Yeah, I love that. And I encourage the audience to go and check out the pqtrainingandcoaching.com. we'll get into Kevin's links at the end. The other question is basically you were talking about this organizational culture, and I had a guest on just before you, and she was talking about leadership, and in the West, leaders are kind of looked down upon. They're kind of viewed as lack of character and lack of integrity and don't follow through on what they say. So how do you move from transactional to transformational leadership?
Great question. And that's one of my passions. The big challenge that you'll find when you're trying to develop leaders, and when I've worked with, first, midline, and senior managers to do that, one of the challenges that we have, all of us have, is that we get really good at something. And then the next thing you know, particularly in the technical environment, you get really good at something, and then you're rewarded by, here's 10 people to go manage. And you're a great coder, you write terrific code and so forth. You do that for 10 years, and the next thing you know, you have a team, but you're not prepared for that, right? So you can't really blame the poor individual that get thrown into that situation. But I think the big thing, with regard, first, is to understand the difference between management and leadership. And management is about managing things, and leadership is about working and leading people, right? So the key is that you have to be able to develop that relational piece versus the task piece. And because we get so good at what we do, moving into the new position, we don't want to let go of things that are going to show us and reinforce us constantly that we are good at our job and we're doing well and so forth. So Matt, what we find was the best leaders excel in two ways. The first thing is they learn to become incredible communicators. And we've done a ton of research on this, as well as many other organizations, that the best leaders all have great communication skills, right? So that's the first thing. And then the second thing that we found is that they are incredible delegators, right? And one of the things that we teach in our program in the Leading Forward Academy is that there's really only one question you have to ask yourself of whether I should be doing it myself or delegating it. It's super easy. Almost nobody does it. And the question is you have to say, hey, if I'm holding on to this task or this activity, am I restricting someone that reports to me from learning or growing? And if the answer is yes, then you need to instantly figure out how to delegate it. And that doesn't mean, and there's a difference between delegating and dumping. We're not talking about dumping on somebody. Is you have to make sure that they're ready for it. Sometimes it means partnering. Sometimes it means getting them a coach. Sometimes it means sending them off to training. But if you are particularly good at something, and that's what we found with the managers that really get burned out and really don't have a high degree of resilience, is that they just hold on to everything for two reasons. One, they're really good at it, so they can see the cause and effect. If I spend 2 hours on this, it'll be done, and I'll be able to help out the team. If I give it to Joe, it's going to take him 10 hours, so I'll just do it myself. And the problem is what they haven't said is, by not giving it to Joe the first time, the next time you have to do this, how long is it going to take Joe? Well, it's still going to take him 10 hours. He hasn't made any progress on it. So a lot of times what you may have to do is you may have to say, okay, I'm going to give it to Joe, or I'm going to give a piece of it to Joe, and then he or she is going to have to work through it. And I essentially am going to coach him, and over X period of time, eventually the next time this comes in, it's going to go to him and so forth. And what that does is, as a more senior person, you've moved into that position, it frees up that time for you to do more of the relationship management. And there's a really interesting thing, the way what humans like is they like causation, right? It's an if-then. If I do this, if I put my 2 hours here, I get the 2 hours back, or I get 4 hours back, or I make that next sale, or that next design goes out that much quicker. And particularly engineers or some people in science love having that causation And what the problem is that if you look at leadership, leadership is about correlation. It's about putting the time in, and generally, you don't get to see what happens for a longer period of time. And what happens is if you're not trained and don't understand that, you're doing like I'm, building a team and I'm having regular conversations and I'm doing a lot of great communications and, I am their support. And I'm not seeing the causation that my brain has, taught me to do for the last 10 or 15 or 20 years of whatever you've been doing. And ultimately, people just say, okay, well, maybe this isn't working, so I'm going to have to default back to kind of doing more of the level of work that I shouldn't, the next level down work that I was good at that I shouldn't be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Really fascinating. And kind of as we have I have a couple more questions.
Sure.
And so what the next question is, when you talk about hiring and retaining the best employees, motivating unengaged employees, how do you do that? Sustainable, highly engaged teams. What do the best leaders do?
Yeah, well, if the listeners are want to go to LinkedIn or you do a search for this, I actually just published two articles on this. I published one on how to hire your best employees, focusing on a manufacturing environment. And then this morning we released the how to retain version of that. It started out as one article and it got so big that we decided to split it. So if anybody wants all of the gory details about kind of I think it's six or seven practices to hire and five or six practices to retain. It's all in the article. Just go in and type in my name and look for an article on hiring or retaining employees. But at a very high level, what we found is you want to hire for talent, right? And you want to train for skill. And the tendency is that we have a tendency to hire for skill. Oh boy, they have 20 years of doing coding here, or 10 years at design, or whatever. And what they really have a talent for is building teams, or something else other than that. So you certainly want to be able to bring somebody in where they have some skill, but you have to ask yourself, can I train them for skill? And then I think the second thing on hiring is you absolutely have to have that right fit. And a lot of people can't tell whether they have a good fit or not until they bring them into the company and they find out it's too late. And you can get the right fit just by asking some really, really simple questions about, when do you work best? Do you work best in a team or individually? When you run into a problem, how do you handle it? And then what kind of the company norm is, and then you can gauge whether that person would fit naturally or not. But if you have a high team environment and they excel at working individually, they're going to be uncomfortable and vice versa.
Yeah. How can people get in touch with you? I know you mentioned your website a little bit earlier, but how can they follow you, check out your work, and so forth?
Yeah. So first of all, if anybody has any questions and they want to get a hold of me, I am very, very reachable. You can reach me at kevin@magnaleadership.com, MAGNA leadership. You can follow us. We have a LinkedIn page, business page at Magna Leadership. We have a Facebook page, a business Facebook page at Magna Leadership. And then if any of you are ex-users or what used to be known as Twitter, we have quite a Twitter following of about 53,000 people. You could follow me, and it's at Dr. Kevin spelled out, DOCTOR Kevin. And you'll be able to the first thing I do every morning is I do 10 to 15 minutes of research. I have a feed that feeds me articles. So I review usually the 20 to 25 articles. And if they're good articles on management, leadership, motivation, engagement, emotional intelligence, it gets posted to all of our social media links. We don't use Instagram or Pinterest or any of those, but we do use the other ones. So you can find me there, or you can even go to our website. Lots of information about the different products we do on our magnaleadership.com website.
Yeah. And for all the audience out there, what a fantastic conversation. All of Kevin's resources will be in the links and show notes. Be sure to check those out. And I really enjoyed this talk on organizational culture management, leadership, and a great story. And with that, thanks so much for coming onto the podcast.
All right, Christopher, thanks again for the opportunity.